Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Happy Muse Day, everybody. Shauna is still on vacation, so I am with Dr. Greg Boyd.
And, I know I'm better looking than Shauna, so this has got to be a plus already, right? Especially after a sleepless night where I look like I'm got in a train wreck.
I was just feeling this way. I was just thinking, gosh, I look pretty good when Shauna's not here. So,
Can you imagine the contrast of me and Shauna? Beauty and the Beast.
Whatever. Well, hey, it's really great to have you on, and this is going to be fun. It is always strange because I usually do a summary of your sermons with Shauna here. It's strange to do a summary of your sermon when you're here. There's a little added pressure. So
I'm watching. I'm listening. It better be good.
Yeah, that's right. I got to confess that. So I'm going to switch the camera view to the summary view, and I'm going to summarize the sermon.
I'm looking forward to hearing this.
And I already forgot the name of the sermon. What was the name of the sermon?
It was the vast
unseen.
Unseen. Yeah, unseen multitude.
Yeah, you forgot it too. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, but I didn't sleep last night, so I have an excuse.
You do. Yes, that's true. All right. So we are kicking off this new Testify series in Revelation. And this chapter, it's sort of like, it kind of talks about this angel. And so you kind of thought, well, this is a good opportunity to, just before we really get into this chapter, let's just tap the brakes and kind of take a look at what are angels, not only why does the Bible talk about them, but how does the Bible talk about them, which I think is just as important. And so you kind of make 4 points in this sermon about angels. The first point is that, in our culture, angels, especially at an academic level, are sort of looked down upon as sort of like a archaic, kind of mythological, kind of the common people might believe those, but the enlightened ones know better, and that kind of thing. And but you're like, well, if you want to take the Christian story serious, you have to realize that angels are a key part of the Christian story, and they appear throughout the scriptures at all of these really important points of God's story. And so that's the first point that you make. The second point that you make is that when you look at the angels of Scripture, there's not like a prototypical angel. There's just this really wide, diverse sort of society of these angels, and so in Revelation 5, you pointed out how the population, if you want to call it that, of angels is countless. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And you compared this to looking at the stars of the sky, and just how even when you just see the stars, it's you're wowed by the number. But then when you realize that each star, some of those are actually galaxies of billions of more stars, and it's just, you get that same sense of abundance that we find in this like society. Yeah, like this layering, right? And you kind of made a couple really good points about that. The first one, just that how God's creation is just bountiful in this kind of abundant sort of way. And then the second point that you made is that everything that God creates is not only bountiful and generous, but also relational. And that the angels kind of show how God does things through other beings, and in the same way that he uses us to accomplish things as well. The third kind of point that you made was that angels are not to be sought, commanded, or adored. And so you just kind of pointed the boundaries that the scriptures have around angels, and that kind of warned us to respect that. And you just made the point that we're if we try to cross those boundaries and try to get access to angels in ways that we're told not to do, we're kind of entering dangerous ground there, because we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into at that point. And this is called divination. And you just said if you want to seek some type of special wisdom, you should just focus on Christ alone, and because all of the fullness of God dwells in Christ. And you took a look at Colossians 2 verses 8 and 9. And then the fourth point which is sort of related, is that not all angels are good, and this is part of the reason why we're warned against divination and things like that. And you kind of looked at the kind of the framework of the spiritual war that we are all born into, and you looked at the fall of Lucifer, and you looked at how Paul recognized that the real struggle of life takes place in a metaphysically complex kind of way, where much of really the heart of the war that we're experiencing takes place at this spiritual level. Our enemies are not flesh and blood. It's this the battle is up here in this other realm. And so if that's true, if we are in this spiritual war, and if we are soldiers in this spiritual war, and if our enemy is not flesh and blood, well, then it makes sense that Paul would say, if you want to be a soldier in this, if you're taking this seriously, well, then you can't get entangled in civilian affairs. You have to focus on this. And so, kind of the three sort of takeaway or summary points that you made is that, first of all, we are at war. We're not on vacation. And you kind of referred us back to that first letter to Woodland Hills Church. And then you talked about the importance of the disciplines as making us good soldiers for this special type of warfare that we are called into. And then the final point that you made is that this is a war that we can't fight on our own, and we need to be a part of a platoon. And so it's important that we're not lone rangers, but we are part of a community. And that is my summary. I know I skipped a lot of stuff, but did I miss anything really important in that?
You didn't even get the freaking point. Well, you missed the whole point. That was a very fine summary.
Okay, good. Is there anything that you would like to add to that you like? Oh, shoot, that maybe you missed in your sermon.
Oh gosh, things like that. There's always things that you have to cut out. I had to cut out a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I think you highlighted all the points. The whole things that they're part of our story. That was your first point, and yeah, and so I think that they're not the centerpiece of our story, but they're also not insignificant, and so we need to kind of know about that. And
yeah, well, it's funny because I just looked in, you've got these books here, God at War and Satan and the Problem of Evil. And it's like, well, yeah, you probably left some stuff out of your 30-minute sermon.
a verse or two I had to exclude. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, here's what I would want to know, because part of this is like, to me, hearing this sermon, and I've been through your God, Evil, and Spiritual Warfare class, which is just a great class, and I hope that we do that again at the church.
We will.
But I was reflecting on like why do I like these sermons and these teachings? Because you warn us that you don't get too fascinated with this stuff, and I'm not fascinated by it at all, and yet I really love these teachings, especially with that sort of tonic that you have there. It's like this is what it is, but you don't make a big deal out of it. And I think part of the reason for that is sort of how you open the sermon, where the belief in angels, the belief in these spiritual beings is so thoroughly disregarded in thinking communities that it's important to hear voices that show the intellectual kind of power of these beliefs and the justification of believing in these things. And so for me, that's why I really like these teachings, because it helps curb the materialism and the what's that called, like the reductionism of
right.
the world. But like in your mind, why does it matter that we believe in angels and demons and things like that?
Well, one of the reasons is that you just touched on. When we recall that there is this countless types of angels, each containing countless angels, and just imagining that in a different realm than we exist in, it expands your understanding of the creation, and it does fight against this idea that we humans are the king of the hill, and they're the highest form of intelligence in all the universe, and here we are, this little tiny speck of dust going around this little sun, which is one of billions of suns in our galaxy, which is one of 2 trillion galaxies. And the next time we upgrade our telescope, there'll be another 20 trillion. I mean, it just keeps on, the universe has gotten 5 times bigger in the last 20 years because of our improvements on our telescopes. So yeah, it puts us in a place in a way. Not that we're unimportant, but we're tiny and we know so little about what's going on in this cosmos. And I think that is just so important. Which leads kind of a second practical implication, and this I couldn't get into in the message, but it's that when that becomes part of the story you live in, and you understand that this vast angelic realm that is part of the web of cause and effect that operates throughout the cosmos on every level. Okay, so when you factor that in, it infinitely complexifies the cosmos, and that's when you realize that's why we can never say why anything happens the way it does, not in any kind of exhaustive way. Behind any contingent fact, any particular fact, 2 people drive on a highway at any particular time, name anything, there's a virtual infinite line of influential causation behind that. And every decision that a free agent makes is like a pebble thrown in the pond that creates ripples that intersect with other ripples and create unintended consequences. And that's why there is such a thing as luck in this universe. There's unintended consequences. That's just what luck is. But because of the infinite complexity of all this, I mean, according to the Christian story, we're still feeling the ripple effects of the fall of our forefathers. And that was a ripple effect of the ascendancy of Lucifer and the fall of the angels. And so it's all woven up together. And that's why we experience life as completely arbitrary. It's just like my dog. Okay, my dog has a lower cognitive Umwelt than humans. We're about 95 million years more evolved. And so my dog, when I am going out for a walk, but then remember that I forgot the poop bag, so I got to go back, she doesn't understand that at all. Anytime I enter a room or go out of the room, she never knows why. She doesn't know what the heck I'm doing when I'm reading or even watching television or talking to a weird, screen on this table. She has no clue of anything. It's all arbitrary to her. So her world is just, it's like a stage and things pop in and pop out for no apparent reason. And I don't know what her capacity is to wonder about those things, but we experience the world very much the same way, but with a higher cognitive function. But it still is everything happens arbitrarily, which is why when it comes to tragedies, we always say, "Why me?" Why my child? And I don't think there's ever. Sometimes you can say, "Well, it's because he got hit by a drunk driver," and that's kind of the explanation for it. But now there's a whole question about why was that guy drunk driving the road at that time, and there's an infinite line of causes behind that. So. But often we don't have even that to go on. We can't even look at proximate causes. There's a guy that I know, a husband of a friend of mine, who dropped dead of a heart attack, 48 years old, and just heart stopped. I'm sure there's some genetic things and all sorts of other factors that go into it, but in the end, we don't have explanations for those things, which is why it's always important, and I'll be emphasizing this in the message for this coming up week. It's always important to know what you know and what you don't know. What we don't know is much of anything in this cosmos. We just don't know much about it at all. It's even on a physical level, we know very little, and we experience very little. I had to take this little stat out, but I'll include it in my message this week. That we only see 0.003% of the total light spectrum. That's 0.003% of the total light spectrum. So that means that 0.997%, no, 99.97%, I probably got that wrong, but you get the point, of what is out there to see, we don't see. 99.997% we don't see. And same thing is true of what we don't hear and what we don't touch and what we don't smell and what we don't taste. We think we know the universe just as it is, but we only know the universe is filtered through our tiny Umwelt, our sensory bubble that's trapped inside of our cognitive bubble. There are limits to what we can think. And so we don't know much about that. But what we do know, what we've got to hang on to, is that we know the character of the one who created this vast multitude and these vast stars and this unthinkably vast cosmos.
Yeah.
And the character of that one is defined by the Lamb who stands on the throne upon which God sits.
Yeah.
And it's defined by the cross. The what of God is a mystery. And the angel, it's also far beyond our comprehension.
Yeah.
That should humble us and cause great reverence to the God who holds all this in the palm of his hand. But that God who holds this all in the palm of his hand has got the character of Jesus Christ slain on the cross, the character of other-oriented love. And that's the most amazing fact of all. That blows away. Even the unfathomability of God's magnitude is surpassed by the unfathomability of his love.
Dude, that was a sermon right there. We should
Well,
add that in the series right there.
I think that's too good not to repeat this.
Well, I think when I heard that, what I thought was, and this is kind of echoing what you're saying, but I'm just like, okay, we have this limited umwelt where we don't understand much at all relative to what's actually there, and so the danger there is to take kind of like opinions about something that we have so little knowledge of and use that to make claims about God, instead of the other way around, where we know what God is actually like. He has revealed his character to us. That is not mystery. God is love. God is everything we see in Christ. And
Right.
we should take that to help us understand what must be true about reality, where we have the limited umwelt.
Yep. I totally agree. Agree. But if we go down this path much further, I'll be revealing too much about my sermon coming up.
All right.
I'll just put in this little advertisement. The classical tradition got it all wrong, in my opinion, because they wrestled endlessly with the being of God and came up with all the wrong answers. He's timeless. He's can't be impacted by anything outside of himself and all this other stuff. And then they try to fit Jesus into that. And it doesn't work very well.
No.
We should start with Jesus, start with the character, and then say what must God be like to have this kind of a character. What kind of attributes are compatible with this kind of character?
Yeah. It's interesting, the different kind of levels, the metaphysical levels here we just get this little peek at, like, the angels and all of that. And I feel maybe we're just given enough just so that we can take away that point that you're making about how we can be humble about these things while also recognizing to protect God's character and to not go that direction, But at the same time, there are these other kind of strange things that like Paul says, for instance. He says that we will judge the angels. And what do you make of stuff like that? Like, what does it mean to judge these higher beings?
Yeah. Well, whenever you have strange statements like that, the first thing is to say, let's not put too much weight on anyone's explanation. Unless there's a really clear-cut winner. But it's once in a while he'll throw out these zinger statements that you go, what? It's like surely there must be a resurrection, for why else are you baptizing for the dead? He says that in 1 Corinthians 15. And of course, the Mormons build a whole doctrine on that. But it's a one-off statement, and you got to be careful with one-off statements. But in this case, the best explanation I've heard, it's the one I like the most. Really, it's the only one that seems remotely plausible. But it's this, that there was a tradition among the rabbis that we will be judged by the animals. And the reason is because we were entrusted to them. Their welfare was entrusted to us. And our job is to care for them and take care of them. And so the judgment day is something of a report card. How did we do? And the ones who will tell us how we did are the ones who either were blessed or were suffered under our lordship. And so this is why I encourage people to be careful about how much harm they inflict on animals, and to not do it unnecessarily if it's at all possible. Because it may be that they're right. It makes sense to me that they'd stand in judgment of us. And so by the same token, we'll stand in judgment of angels. And here I think it's just the category of angels that were responsible for us, had some say so in our lives. And we'll stand in judgment of them. simply by bearing witness to whether they did a good or bad job, did they carry out fulfill their mission to us, which implies, and this adds complexity to our understanding of the universe, which is, I think, always a good thing. But it implies that there's fudge room on angelic competency and fudge room on angelic character. In other words, uh, we couldn't stand in judgment of those who were entrusted to us unless they could do, like we do, a good or bad job and have a good or bad character. And so the character and both of the level and the character and the competency of the angels in charge of us have affect us, just like the competency of a parent affects the child.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So,
and the other thing is that there's a number of other scriptures I could give that would support this. The best one I think is Habakkuk 2:17, where he's speaking to, I think it's the king of Babylon, and he says, "The violence you have inflicted on animals will come back on your head."
yeah.
And that's what I think it is, to be judged by the animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, in an age of industrial farms, I mean, we have a moral obligation. I think every believer has a moral obligation to look into what pain an animal had to go through to get on your plate.
Yeah.
And if check out what happens in industrial farms, because most of the meat you get in the grocery stores it comes from industrial farms. If you're going to be a meat eater, I encourage folks to go local, go free range, where they can live a natural existence.
Yeah.
Because in industrial farms, now I'm told there are exceptions to this, but at least in the majority of them, there's nothing natural about the existence of the cows and the pigs and the chickens as they live out their miserable life waiting to be executed.
Yeah.
It's just, and pigs are extremely intelligent, but they're treated like tomatoes, putting in a little crate where they can't even turn around. Many times they go insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I endorse that 100%. And and that's where, you as an unbeliever, like if I just thought it was all randomness and all of that, I probably wouldn't care as much. But as a Christian, thinking of like animals in those situations, I've heard Christians say, well, it's just a chicken. And it's like, well, you're just a human. You're very low on the overall spectrum of beings. You're pretty close to the bottom here,
Right.
And yet look at how much God loved you and how far he went. You think that he wouldn't go a quarter of an inch further for, an elephant? I mean, of course he would. He loves all of these, animals.
Right.
And so, and it also, and I don't want to go off too much, but let me just say one more thing.
I'll let you say one more thing.
Okay, thanks. And I know that you've experienced this too, but just like you just stop and you've got your normal parade of thoughts in your head and all of that, and then all of a sudden you just come to the moment. You just come aware of, wait a minute, just put those thoughts aside for a second. I exist. And you just get that little joy of just being, and
yeah.
Of course,
it's kind of a meta consciousness. You also have that you discover the wonder of being, and just the unexpectedness of being.
Yeah.
Heidegger called it our thrownness. We're just thrown here, but you wake up to that, and the strangeness of it. Why is there something rather than nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's good, and you like it. It's
yes.
good to be here, and I think animals have to have that too. I mean, they have to, and they might not be able to articulate it, but the experience of it is real.
They clearly rather would live than die.
That's right.
And so, there's a positivity just in having the privilege of existing.
Yeah. Huh.
That's why Plato thought the highest principle of being was, he called it the good. The good. It's good that there is being.
Yeah.
Now, what we do with being is not always good, but it's good that there is being.
Huh.
Yeah, and that's and here again, I'll get into this message. You guys listen to the MuseCast. You don't even have to listen next week. But it is Einstein once said there are two types of people: those who see everything as miraculous, and those who see nothing as miraculous. And he was of the opinion that everything is miraculous, and there's a miracle quality to it. Just what what sustains us. It's moment by moment. There's so much mystery around there, and I've come to love mystery, as I'll testify in the message this week.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Now, let me ask you this then. You had hinted about people who had these encounters with angels, and you kind of hinted that you might have had an encounter. I have
I
had
didn't.
one
And
encounter.
I shared the time in the woods
That's
where
right.
I was crying and cried myself to sleep and woke up to the whispering of angels.
Yeah, but there was another one that you hinted at, and I have one also that I want to share. But I would love to hear the other one that you.
Well, yeah. So, and this is as many of these stories are anecdotal, but the abbreviated version of this is I was called out to the Pentagon, if you can believe that. This is in the
Wow.
mid '90s, and
Quick, call a pacifist.
I know. So but I was, I might have done it even as a pacifist because Jesus went wherever he was invited.
Mhm.
I wouldn't get snooty about that. I don't think. I think they need to hear the gospel. So the chaplain who's the head of the whole Pentagon, invited me to come, and I had 4 days of doing different talks. It was just, and the schedule was grueling. It was, I didn't hardly ever come up for air. On the last day, I was oh, I had first spoken to these generals. It was really intense. There's 20 generals in this room, and I delivered the gospel to them. And I had these other meetings, and I had one final meeting where I was going to be speaking to the largest crowd of my whole 4 days. And there's going to be senators there, and important people. And I hadn't had time to prepare a message because I was on such a tight schedule, so I'm stressed out. And this guy had me booked to meetings right up to the time I was supposed to speak. But I finally said to him, I need 40 minutes or so to catch my thoughts and to just get ready for this talk. And so he canceled the last meeting, and I got to go. I went to the chapel, this little tiny chapel, and so I'm in there, and I'm just like praying, God, give me your wisdom and revelation because I don't have much to. And all of a sudden, this guy he just bursts into the room. He's a short man. He couldn't have been like I'm 4'8", really short, but he's wearing a suit and a tie. He's from Africa somewhere, he's African, and he's got a woman with him who is curled over in pain. And he says to me, I found this woman in and I couldn't understand it that clearly all the time because he had a strong accent. I found her in the hallway somewhere, and I started praying for her, and she's got a demon, and you need to help us cast the demon out. And I'm like, I don't. This is the last thing I want to do. I need to collect my thoughts. And I tried to push back a little bit, like I just need some time with God. He goes, no, man, you got to be here. We got to cast this thing out. And so he kind of pulls me over, and so we start praying over this woman, and she starts kind of responding and whatever, and starts crying, whatever, and he keeps on, you get out of here right now. He's casting the demon out, so I'm praying along with him, and then there's a time where the lady is kind of like, and he goes, wait, it is done. It is done. In Jesus' name, it is done. And the lady's just this relief and is thanking him and whatever. And then he turns around and bolts out. And just disappears. And the lady didn't speak any English, but she seemed to know kind of what to do. And I just helped her to feet and to her feet. She thanked me for it, and then left. Well, she just said that she goes, I was in a bad way. It's terrible English. I'm kind of reconstructing it. Bad way. Man helped, but she didn't know who the guy was, so far as I could tell. And afterwards, I asked people about a short little, man who from Africa that no one ever could say that they saw him. I talked to the chaplain and some others. He seemed to appear out of nowhere, but that just happened. Anyways, well, before he left, I forgot this part. He prayed a prayer over me, and he just, and I told him about I'm going to give a speech here pretty soon. So he just prayed this prayer really quick, and he just kind of like did this whooshing thing over me, and I felt this refreshment.
Huh.
This like refreshment and confidence.
Wow.
And then he bolts out of the room. Then I turned to help the lady up and all the rest. But I went and gave that talk, and it just was as eloquent as anything I've ever done. It just kind of flowed. So the Bible says sometimes you entertain angels unaware, and so that's I can't say I'm certain
Wow.
of it, but man,
Right.
it's a cool
Yeah.
story.
Wow, that totally is. Well, and I think mine is similar in that I can't say what it was, but it felt different. And I was 16 going on 17, and I was my mom worked shift work, so she was gone. She worked night shifts and stuff like that. And I thought I was going to be Batman. I mean, I really thought I was going to be like a
Really,
superhero. I was
I
really
thought it
in,
might be Superboy, and Superboy could beat up Batman.
yeah, well, you grew out of it younger than I did. I was a late teen. Well,
Oh,
this was,
really? You
and I
still got
was
to be Batman when you're 18?
going on 17. Yeah. Well, I
Oh,
mean, I thought that I was going to be like a special forces kind of guy, and
okay.
I was all about physical fitness
All right. I
and I
love it.
was kind of I was at this youth group and I was kind of, a new believer basically. I kind of believed some of it and I had all of these questions and stuff like that, but I was just kind of getting into it. Well, I used to run to back then it was called US Swim and Fitness. It was this health club chain and it was about a 3 mile run. And I would go and I like to go there at like 1 a.m. because there was nobody else there and I could just do anything I wanted, didn't have to wait. And so I would run there, do a workout, and then run home. And I'd get home at like 2:30, 3 o'clock, and well, this one night, this is a school night too. So I have school in a few hours. And
Wow.
one night, this is at about, I don't know, 2 a.m., 2:15 a.m. I'm coming out of the health club and I run up the hill, this grassy hill, and there's a road at the top of the hill. And I just felt like I'm exhausted. I'm going to just lay in the grass here for a minute and just kind of rest. And like, I didn't even quite fall asleep. And all of a sudden, this truck stops right at the curb. It's like he can't see me from up there. Why is he stopping? Well, he opens his passenger door and he says, "Hey, buddy, you want to ride?" And now this is like, don't do this, kids, if if you're ever alone in the dark and a man asks you to get in his truck. But I was so tired, I wasn't even thinking. I was like, oh man, I would love a ride. So I get in, and this is what bothers me about the story is it's just so cliche. But he has Bob Dylan's "Knocking on Heaven's Door" playing in his cab, and so I get in and I told him, okay, and I realized maybe I shouldn't be here because this is a stranger, and I shouldn't do this. And so he asked me where am I going, and I'm like, I'm not going to show him where I live, so I'm going to just have him drop me off a block away. And so he's like, okay, fine. So he drives me there, and "Knocking on Heaven's Door" is playing, and it's about a 10 to 12 minute drive. And we get there and he lets me out and "Knocking on Heaven's Door" is still playing and it's only a 2 minute song. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that's really weird. And so I said, hey, thanks. I have no idea what he looks like because I was just so out of it. But I shut
Huh.
the door and he turns around and he squeals away. And I turn and I look, there's no truck. It's like,
Seriously.
because you're on the top of it's County Road 11 in Burnsville, and you look down the hill and you can see for a mile and a half. I could not find the truck. I couldn't see a tail light or nothing, and I'm just
Wow.
like, that was so weird.
That
And
is very strange.
but what I felt was when the truck was gone, and I'm like looking for it. I'm looking all over for it. I had this feeling like there is a love. There was this special love, and
Mm,
and at that point in my life, man, I needed to
yeah.
feel that. I needed to
Wow.
feel that.
That's a great story. That's a great story. They ought to, if maybe they already do, but and some station have, a TV show where it's just angelic visitations and people tell
Yeah.
those stories and have them reenacted and whatever. That'd be okay. A similar, a little bit. It involves an auto, but this happened to my brother when he was around 16 or 17. Um, he was driving on 61 and Highway 61 over here, and he dropped it. This was back when they had 8-track tapes, and he was reaching for an 8-track tape, went over veered off the street, and then went the road, and then went off a cliff, and then crashed and rolled onto these railroad tracks that are down this hill from Highway 61, and I remember when my dad got a call because my brother was in the hospital. And so we were on our way to the hospital, but the cop cars were still there when we were going into the hospital. So we stopped for a minute to go look at the crash. And my dad started crying because how could anyone survive this thing? It was just unbelievable. Well, to make a long story short, Chris tells the story that he remembers being upside down in this smashed car. And when you see this car, he had to be laying exactly right to have survived it. He was just positioned in a way that there's a little bump for him. And he said, the cops had said when they first got there, he was just sitting down by his car. And and he said to one of the cops, he said, "How did you get out of this car?" And he said, "That nice man helped me." And there's no man there when the cops got there. And the cop said, "I'm impressed you had the presence of mind to turn off the key." And that's like Chris never did that. He wasn't even conscious till he, was being brought out. And somehow this guy was able to pry open this door that was smashed shut. I mean, and that requires like supernatural strength. When we saw the car, it just, there's no way he could have done that by himself. And this nice man who seems to be very, very strong just disappeared.
Wow.
Those kind of stories are
Yeah.
intriguing.
Wow. Yeah, they really are. Huh. Well, that's great. Thank you for joining the MuseCast. And I kind of forgot that we're doing a show here because I just got so into the stories. So, but yeah. So one thing that we do, we end the show, and I haven't even been thinking of this, but we end the show with a nugget, which is just a short little kind of a closing thought or a closing insight or a helpful point or anything like that. And we call it a nugget, and that's how we close the show. Do you have one that you would like to share, or would you like me to share one?
Well,
And then...
one takeaway I would just say, and to repeat it, is that always remember we don't know much of anything about this cosmos. We are in the position of Job, but we do know the character of God, and hold fast to that. And that character is revealed in Jesus Christ crucified.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't think I can even beat that. I can't. There's nothing. Everything I say would have to go
But it's not
off
a competition.
No, you're right.
Be nice to strangers because you never know. One of them might be an angel, and the Bible
Right.
teaches that in the book of Hebrews. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think what I would just say is from that is no matter what situation you face, you can always trust God's character and God's love. And for me, I've said this multiple times on the MuseCast, but when I really trust in God's goodness and his love for me, I can face anything. I mean, I can face no matter how bad things are. If I really know that there's a good and loving God on the other side, and we know that, and we can trust that no matter
right.
what happens.
And then, and with that, you're never alone. You have got a company of angels that are there, as well as the Holy Spirit. And so you are yourself a team effort when you think about it as in an angelic kind of way.
Yeah.
I think that provides some kind of reassurance.
That would be a good T-shirt. I am a team effort.
There you go. Of angelic proportions.
Yeah, right. Oh, cool. All right, Greg. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for watching, and be sure to catch the message this Sunday, and you can join us. I think Sean will be back next week on the MuseCast live here a week from now. See you, everybody.
Adios.